Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. For the record, I'm Tina Kotek, Governor of the great state of Oregon, and excited to be here today with my friend, Senate President Wagner, to talk about Senate Bill 141. Earlier this session, although it's March, way back in the earlier part of this session, I introduced the bill to give school districts more fiscal predictability on their state school fund budgets through House Bill 2140, and that is currently down in Ways and Means. And that work on resetting how we calculate the current service level for the state school fund led me to put a historic $11.36 billion investment in my budget for the state school fund, and I hope you support that level of funding. But as I said then, this increased investment cannot be a blank check. Oregon students deserve more than the status quo, and frankly, we have a responsibility to use every state dollar in a way that delivers the best education for every student. I recognize that we're at a critical moment for our state's education system. We have a state full of incredible students, as well as dedicated educators who work hard every day to make the lives of our students better and help them to have a future that is successful. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate all the hard work that's happening today in our schools, because it is good work. But it is also clear that the academic outcomes are recovering slower compared to other states after the pandemic. Nationally, Oregon is in the middle of the pack for our per pupil spending, but our outcomes are some of the worst in the nation. And this highlights a problem with our accountability system and how we oversee and track our outcomes. The goal of Senate Bill 141 is to go back to basics and build a stronger accountability framework for ensuring better student outcomes. State leaders and Oregon families need better visibility into how students are doing, and we need to build on what is working. Our state currently tracks outcomes based on 5 metrics that were named in the 2019 Student Success Act, which I think set a very strong foundation. We look at those metrics to evaluate school district success: regular attendance, 3rd grade reading proficiency, 9th grade on track, 4-year graduation rates, and 5th-year completion rates. The -1 amendment to Senate Bill 141 builds on that existing work with those metrics and then adds 2 new metrics to add to our accountability system: kindergarten attendance and 8th grade math proficiency. Research shows that those are strong predictors of student success. The amendment also looks at assessments. The bill would standardize the use of interim assessments, which measure student performance growth over the course of the school year, allowing teachers and districts to get a better sense of what's working so they can make real-time adjustments to drive better student outcomes. And when a district's outcomes do not improve over time, we have to take a more hands-on approach to help them get on the right track. The proposed amendment includes required coaching and support when districts haven't met their growth targets for 3 years. Right now, that coaching is available to districts under the Student Success Act, but optional. It needs to be required. For districts that haven't met their growth target for 4 years, the state would be able to direct spending for up to 25% of the state school fund and student investment account dollars to help ensure funding is going to best practices that will improve outcomes. Additionally, to ensure all Oregon students have access to high-quality literacy instruction, my bill would require school districts to adopt research-aligned instructional materials for early literacy. Our students deserve to have access to the best possible instructional materials. That is why my bill would eliminate the currently required publisher fees. The publisher pay-to-play approach that we have used in the state for publishers to submit instructional materials for evaluation would have to be changed under this bill. In my conversations with education leaders, there's a reoccurring theme of how bureaucratic administrative requirements get in the way of our shared goal of delivering a high-quality education. Oregon's education system has a complicated web of programs, funding streams, and reporting processes. We need to give schools back more of their time to focus on students and not paperwork. So the amendment to the bill directs the Department of Education to review reporting requirements, programs, and processes that do the same thing and figure out what can be streamlined. Bureaucratic burden is also a consequence of Oregon's long list of Division 22 and Division 24 standards. Those are the requirements for a standard school district or education service district in the state. These standards should better reflect the health and strength of district infrastructure to support academic achievement. But currently, the list of standards is long, and not every standard directly aligns to better academic outcomes. The amendment to the bill directs the Department of Education to review and prioritize these requirements, to focus on the things we know work and help student staff spend less time doing the paperwork and more time helping their students. I believe the state has to hold up its end of the bargain in helping our districts. The bill goes hand in hand with a set of directions I've given to the agency to be more responsive, transparent, and to operate with best practices. I've directed the agency to consolidate grants, to ease the workload for school districts, strengthen data collection and public transparency, improve internal operations, elevate existing best practices, and develop responsive support for school districts across Oregon. Our director, Dr. Charlene Williams, is here today, and we'll go into those administrative efforts that are currently underway. Getting public education right is one of the biggest promises we make to Oregonians. Students and families want a quality public education that works for them. When schools aren't delivering for students, we all have to step up. And frankly, it's time to be clear-eyed about our numbers and change how the state and districts work together on improving student outcomes. This bill aligns with Oregonians who believe school districts must set clear, data-driven goals to improve student outcomes, and that the state must be a better partner in providing guidance to support those outcomes. If we're going to restore trust in our public education system, we can't leave this session without this bill. And I very much appreciate your time today and would like to hand it off to my colleague in this effort, the Senate President.
Thank you, Madam Governor, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For your record, my name is Rob Wagner. I'm the state senator for Senate District 19, which includes Lake Oswego, Tualatin, West Lynn, Southwest Portland, the cities of River Grove and Durham, Multnomah County, Clackamas County, and unincorporated Washington County. I'm also very honored to serve as the state Senate President, and I'm here to testify with the governor in support of Senate Bill 141 and its companion legislation that we saw in the House. I believe it's House Bill 2009.
Yes.
And I want to applaud Governor Kotek and her team for continuing to work on and advance this important topic. It's conversations that we've had for quite some time. Supporting students in their education has been my life's passion. It's been my honor. I began my career as an advocate for educators and classified staff and faculty and academic professionals. And on a personal level, my commitment to education runs deep through my parents and grandparents, and both my sisters are public school teachers. All of my 4 children have attended public schools and successfully graduated. And I started my sort of career in this space by, like many of you, I volunteered. I served on the site council. I participated as a member of the Schools Foundation, and I ran for and served on our local school board. And I do strongly support this legislation and hope to provide a little bit of context on how it fits within the conversation culture within education accountability and reform. Prior to this job, a couple jobs ago, I got an opportunity to sit in that exact seat as the chair of the Senate Education Committee. And it really was an incredible opportunity to learn so much more about our schools and to be able to, every other Monday night, I would actually sit here. I think it was a 3 p.m. hearing, and then I'd rush home because I had a school board meeting. And it was interesting to see the difference between conversations about what folks at the local level thought we were doing and what we were actually doing, the conversations we were having. But let me tell you, from that experience, I think there's maybe a little bit of a collective eye roll from the back of the room about, here we go again, another education initiative. And I can tell you why they might feel that way. Your amazing LPRO analyst actually put together a document back in 2022. You can find it online, and I see her collective eye roll as well, called The History of Pre-K-12 Education Reform from 1985 to 2022. And it is really good. And so the other night, because Lori's traveling, I didn't have anything to do. So I went through and I read it, and I put together an entire compendium of all the different initiatives that our state has had in the last 30 plus years. And I want to read just very briefly. I'm not going to go through, don't worry, Ms. Gazelter. I'm not going to go through and read the entire thing, but let me just give you some highlights. Since the Nation at Risk report was authored in the mid-1980s, just in Oregon, here's an idea. And I graduated high school, so for the record, the year that Measure 5 passed. So I've actually lived through a lot of this, and then also been a parent through a lot of it. 1989, 21st Century Schools Program. 1991, the Education Act for the 21st Century. 1993, lottery funding. 1995, Common Curriculum. 1997, the Students Successful Schools Act, 1999, Project Success for Oregon's Educational Future. 2001, the Quality Education Commission and the report on ballot measure 1. 2001, No Child Left Behind and our implementation here at the state level. 2003, establishing the High Cost Disability Grant. 2005, the Expanded Options Program. 2020, again in 2005, House Bill 3129, 4 years of English, 3 years of math to graduate. You can test out. In that same year, House Bill 2263, abolishing the Education Act for the 21st century and eliminating the SIM and CAM. I think my younger brother is the only person in the state that has both a SIM, a certificate of initial mastery, and a CAM. So I think he probably displays it on his wall. Then we had Obama with Race to the Top. We had, again, in Oregon, Common Core. In 2011, the Oregon Education Investment Board. 4 years later, goodbye. We've had the Every Student Succeeds Act. We've had Measure 98 with CTE and dropout prevention. And then we had the Student Success Act in 2019. Then obviously we've gone through COVID and had the ESSER money. And then we had, and I don't know if he's here, but he seems to be like, he texted me a bad penny, he keeps showing up. But Senator Dembro's tome of initiatives from the last legislative session, also called the Omnibus. So let me just tell you, I can understand why K-12 districts might be a little bit suspicious of us sitting here today because of the volume of different initiatives that this legislature and people in the general public and at the federal level have thrown at them. But the reason why I'm sitting here today is because of what's actually contained in the bill. And when you look at the bill, and I know the chair of this committee and I have had many conversations about what are we doing? Are we just establishing another teach to the test where it's a checkbox exercise and we're not talking about robust metrics for student performance? And in the legislation, what's great about it is that it builds upon the best practices that we've actually seen. So the fact that you're talking about, you're not jettisoning on-time graduation rate or 5-year completion or 9th grade on track or 8th grade math, or actually looking at NAEP research and trying to figure out how we do benchmarks, looking at attendance. These are critical pieces for our schools to be able to come together and learn from each other. And that's really what this is and what the governor's constructed here. This isn't a coming in and hitting the back of your hand with a ruler. This is actually trying to find local districts that are doing it well, elevating those best practices and disseminating it throughout the state. And if the state can be a constructive partner in that effort, then I'm all in. So I also just want to note that school funding in Oregon has been a challenge. We know that since the passage of Measure 5 and Measure 50 and Measure 88 and Measure 11 and all the different demands that we've had. But since 2003, we've moved our ranking in terms of state support from around 30th to now 15th. And that's actually before full phase-in and implementation of the Student Success Act. That's NEA data, by the way. I was nerding out on that as well the other night. So the reason why I think this legislation is so important for your consideration, or the companion legislation, is the House, because it looks at multiple measures of student success. Again, it's not just teaching to the one test. It also provides local flexibility for our districts to learn and to be able to build on what's going well. And it provides targeted assistance and training for the students, not just the districts, but the students who need it the most. So I do believe that the governor's legislation here, Senate Bill 141, is the next right move in this direction, but we have to stick with it. We can't continue to do what we've done and have an education initiative that sets aggressive goals and then back away from it. So I think this legislature, as we're establishing this for the record, and Ms. Gezelter writes her next tome 20 years from now, that we can say, in this legislative session, we actually leverage best practices and we stayed the course. So that's my commitment to the governor, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the bill today.